and welcome to the Lazy Book Club podcast, the book club for those who don't want to read or leave the house. My name is Matt Gonsalves.
Ahoy there, it's David.
And I am Josh Matheson.
Apparently, you know that Ahoy, this is going to be my random fact straight off. Ahoy was what the guy who invented the telephone wanted you to actually say when you answered it.
I thought it was halloo.
I thought it was Ahoy and that is all instead of goodbye.
Really?
I'd like that.
I know the second one's definitely right. It's definitely that is all.
That is all.
Because I thought halloo was it's a hunting call.
Oh, is it?
Which is why it would be saying it in context.
Yeah, I'm probably going to get messages to say I'm wrong now.
You're on the phone for the first time. There's like pressure. You're like, what am I going to say? Pants.
Ahoy is
nautical, isn't it?
No. Well, yes.
Oh.
But it's ahoy is actually hello and goodbye. Like it's like salut means kind of hi and bye and like
right.
Ciao.
Aloha.
Yeah, and aloha and ciao. Ahoy it means the same thing, but in some kind of language I can't remember, Scandinavian perhaps.
Right. Okay.
Bring back ahoy.
Yeah, I think it's a great word.
Yeah.
I like that is all because it would stop you having those phone conversations where people try to add stuff.
Yeah.
You're like, okay then, right. Well, it was really nice to speak to you. Oh, and I must remember the chairs. No.
That is all.
That is all.
Good day, sir.
We'll finish this podcast today with that is all.
That is all.
I'm not going to forget it. Let's do it.
So this week we're looking at chapter 12 of Peter Pan, which is the children get carried away.
No, that's a slightly different chapter, I think. Not far off, though. The children are carried off. The children get carried away and start
Isn't
stabbing.
Getting carried off that's got a euphemistic nature to it, isn't it, as well?
It sounds
getting carried off by someone. There is.
It's kidnapping, isn't it?
Yes, we'll go with that.
Oh, are you thinking something? Oh, okay. Right. You can tell me afterwards. This is a PG podcast.
But it's also because I didn't actually say it. I can be as euphemistic as you like. The thought exists only in the heads of those people that know it.
Yes. So if you are offended by that, you have only yourself and your own brain to.
Yeah.
That's because you're filth. Filth.
Win. Yeah.
So last week we heard Wendy's story, which was just about them arriving in Neverland and their plan to eventually go home. Them talking about the window being open.
And the little future flash forward about, oh, look, there's Wendy and John and Michael grown up and they come back and the window's still open and everything's still good. Yeah.
And then Peter gave the revelation that after he left home, he then went back to his house to find that there was another new little boy sleeping in his bedroom. His mum had forgotten about him.
Yeah.
And so that left the darling children to start to panic that their parents won't actually have the window open and that they won't have a home to go back to if they don't go back sooner rather than later. And then the chapter finished quite eventfully with the pirates attacking the tribe and Peter deciding that he wants to go and have a little go at that, probably to vent some frustration at the darling children leaving him. And that's where we left off, wasn't it? So we're kind of hoping that we dive straight into an all-out brawl or some kind of...
We need it. We've earned it. We've had a lot of clubhouse, not even banter, really.
No, we've been
telling
very
stories
patient.
about stuff we know about.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you a story. It's everything you know.
Yeah.
I've heard in this book already. Wendy tells a story. Turn to page 25. If Lewis Carroll was doing it, that's what you do.
But that's the thing. It's like, for whose benefit was that story? Because the reader knows it because we've been there since the beginning. And then he even says that the Lost Boys have heard the story multiple times before.
Yep.
So nobody is hearing this for the first time.
Wendy just clearly lives at the creative mind.
No, she isn't.
Oh, bless her.
But there you go. So shall we find out what this fighting is about and what's going on?
Chapter 12. The children are carried off. See, now you said it, I can't not hear that. David! The pirate attack had been a complete surprise, a sure proof that the unscrupulous Hook had conducted it improperly, for to surprise redskins fairly is beyond the wit of the white man. By all the unwritten laws of savage warfare, it is always the redskin who attacks, and with the wiliness of his race, he does it just before the dawn, at which time he knows the courage of the whites to be at its lowest ebb. The white men have in the meantime made a rude stockade on the summit of yonder undulating ground, at the foot of which a stream runs, for it is destruction to be too far from water. There wait the onslaught, the inexperienced ones clutching their revolvers and treading on twigs, but the old hands sleeping tranquilly until just before the dawn.
I'm hoping that with every sentence you say, it's going to start making sense.
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe the next sentence will clarify what I'm listening to.
I think they're just trying to demonstrate the differences between how the Redskins approach a battle and how other people do.
Yeah, but trust J M Barrie to make a battle complicated. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it could just happen. You could have gone, the pirates attacked, the Redskins were surprised.
Yeah, and give me a description.
That is all we need.
I want to know about Smee jangling it around.
Now, normally, if you attack a Redskin at 4 o'clock, it'll be surprised. But if you do them at 5:30, it'll be ready. If the white person comes at 6:25, he might not be ready, but it depends what he's had for his dinner. If it's sunny, if it's raining, it's like...
But it's just so overcomplicated, isn't it? I just don't quite understand why. But anyway, hopefully it will make sense in a paragraph's time.
Through the long black night, the savage scouts wriggle snake-like among the grass without stirring a blade. The brushwood closes behind them, as silently as sand into which a mole has dived. Not a sound is to be heard. I love a little image of a little mole diving.
Yeah, I
in the
enjoyed that metaphor.
Not a sound is to be heard, save when they give vent to a wonderful imitation of the lonely call of the coyote. The cry is answered by other braves, and some of them do it even better than the coyotes, who are not very good at it.
What?
They're not very good at their own noise. I don't know.
Why is he slagging off the coyotes now? Oh, they rubbish at reacting.
What makes it better? Do they add vibrato or like what is it? Is it ow?
a little bit of vibrato in the end.
Have you seen that YouTube video? The dog that has vibrato.
No.
You like how? I need to find it. Honestly, it's like the Luther Vandross of dogs. It's hilarious.
Amazing.
Maybe Nana's just a really good singer, and that's like because this world is technically created by the children. Maybe Nana's just like an opera singer, and the coyote's just like like pub karaoke in comparison.
So the chill hours wear on, and the long suspense is horribly trying to the pale-face who has to live through it for the first time. But to the trained hand, those ghastly calls and still ghastlier silences are but an imitation of how the night is marching. That this was the usual procedure was so well known to Hook that in disregarding it he cannot be excused of the plea of ignorance. The pickaninnies, on their part, trusted implicitly to his honour, and their whole action of the night stands out in marked contrast to his. They left nothing undone that was consistent with the reputation of their tribe. With that alertness of the senses which is at once the marvel and despair of civilized peoples, they knew that the pirates were on the island from the moment one of them trod on a dry stick, and in an incredibly short space of time the coyote cries began. Every foot of ground between the spot where Hook had landed his forces and the home under the trees was stealthily examined by braves wearing their moccasins with the heels in front. They found only one hillock with a stream at its base, so that Hook had no choice. Here he must establish himself and wait for just before the dawn. Everything being thus mapped out with almost diabolical cunning, the main body of the Redskins folded their blankets around them, and in the phlegmatic manner that is to them, the pearl of manhood squatted above the children's home, awaiting the cold moment when they should deal pale death. Here, dreaming, though wide awake, of the exquisite tortures to which they were to put him at break of day, these confiding savages were found by the treacherous Hook. From the accounts afterwards, supplied by such of the scouts as escaped the carnage, he does not seem even to have paused at the rising ground, though it is certain that in That grey light, he must have seen it. No thought of waiting to be attacked appears from first to last to have visited his subtle mind. He would not even hold off till the night was nearly spent. On he pounded with no policy but to fall to, get into combat. What could the bewildered scouts do? Masters as they were of every warlike artifice save this one, but trot helplessly after him, exposing themselves fatally to view, while they gave pathetic utterance to the coyote cry. Around the brave tiger lily were a dozen of their stoutest warriors, and they suddenly saw the perfidious pirates bearing down upon them. Fell from their eyes then the film through which they had looked at victory. No more would they torture at the stake. For them the happy hunting grounds was now. They knew it, but as their father's sons they acquitted themselves. Even then they had time to gather in a phalanx, dense formation, that would have been hard to break had they risen quickly. But this they were forbidden to do by the traditions of their race. It is written that the noble savage must never express surprise in the presence of the white. Thus terrible as the sudden appearance of the pirates must have been to them, they remained stationary for a moment, not a muscle moving, as if the foe had come by invitation. Then, indeed, the tradition gallantly upheld, they seized their weapons, and the air was torn with the war cry. But it was now too late. It is no part of ours to describe what was a massacre rather than a fight. Thus perished many of the flower of the Piccaninny tribe. Not all unavenged did they die.
So basically he's saying normally what happens is the tribe attacks first. Hook has broken that rule, as it were, by being the person to attack them.
Yeah.
They've been caught unawares, but because they have this pride in being great warriors, they don't like kind of to show that they've been surprised or caught with their trousers down. So they just grabbed their weapons and fought bravely anyway, even though they knew that the chances of them being able to win because they'd been caught unawares was very slim.
Yes.
And then basically he's just decided that the actual battle, i.e. the exciting bit, he's just not going to bother describing to us.
I was going to say, like...
Art of war there.
We've got all that blinking preamble, and then he goes, we won't talk about the massacre because it was a bit too much.
Yeah.
I think that would, like, even for a child of 100 years ago, they would have been going like, what?
Yeah.
That's the only excitement they get.
I sort of was in there, and then I came out again, and it took me a while to get back into what was actually going on, because there was so much like sort of wording to it. I understood then about the sort of the readiness of the Redskins and everything, but like I enjoyed the description about the sort of moving through the night. I thought that was the start of a really like suspenseful start. Like a twig broke. The Redskins look up. They saw nothing. Suddenly out in the dark. Like. Yeah.
But like the glint of a hook in the darkness, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you could have built so much suspense around this. And even if you don't want to describe the gory details, give me some of the blows.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like Tiger Lily's meant to be this amazing like warrior.
Yeah.
Who's got a hatchet and just, doesn't take any prisoners, and at least give me some of it.
I think she buried the hatchet. Where's it gone?
Thus perished many of the flower of the Piccaninny tribe. Not all unavenged did they die, for with lean wolf fell Alf Mason, to disturb the Spanish Main no more, and among the others who bit the dust were Geo, Scowry, Chass, Turley, and the Alsatian Fogarty.
Oh, the dog died.
That's sad.
The good singer as well. The alto.
Turley fell into the tomahawk of the terrible Panther, who ultimately cut a way through the pirates with Tiger Lily and a small remnant of the tribe.
That sounds like a bad excuse, doesn't he? Oh, he fell into my knife.
I didn't mean it.
He fell into my knife 10 times.
He had it coming. I really want to see the pirate. I want to see the pirate version of that.
To what extent Hook is to blame for his tactics on this occasion is for the historian to decide. He had waited on the rising ground till the proper hour he and his men would probably have been butchered, and in judging him it is only fair to take this into account. What he should perhaps have done was to acquaint his opponents that he proposed to follow a new method. On the other hand, this, as destroying the element of surprise, would have made his strategy of no avail, so that the whole question is beset with difficulties. One cannot at least withhold a reluctant admiration for the wit they had conceived, so bold a scheme, and the fell, deadly genius with which it was carried out. What were his own feelings about himself at that triumphant moment? Fain, gladly, would his dogs have known, as breathing heavily and wiping their cutlasses, they gathered at a discreet distance from his hook, and squinted through their ferret eyes at this extraordinary man. Elation must have been in his heart, but his face did not reflect it. Ever a dark and solitary enigma, he stood aloof from his followers, in spirit as in substance. The night's work was not over yet, for it was not the redskins he had come out to destroy. They were but the bees to be smoked, so that he could get to the honey. It was Pan he wanted, Pan and Wendy and their band, but chiefly Pan. Peter was such a small boy that one tends to wonder at the man's hatred of him. True, he had flung Hook's arm to the crocodile, but even this, and the increased insecurity of life to which it led, owing to the crocodile's persistence, hardly account for a vindictiveness so relentless and malignant.
It's funny how so every now and then he will say that it was the arm that was cut off. And I'm just imagining, like, could you imagine a stub here with a hook?
Yeah, like a really long hook.
It's suddenly a lot less threatening, isn't it?
Like a broom handle.
Like a stumpy T-Rex arm with a hook on the end of it. I'll cut you. I'll cut you.
Just come closer.
Yeah, exactly. Come here so I can stab you.
It's extendable like Inspector Gadget.
A telescope bit.
An umbrella. Yeah.
But yeah, it's like if you cut someone's like at the wrist, that's a hand. Do you know what I mean? It's not an arm.
True.
It's a hand.
It puts a whole new sort of aspect on Captain Cox then, doesn't it?
It would have to be a very long one.
Yeah, I don't think David Dickarm has quite the same. Yeah, it doesn't sound quite as good, does it? The truth is that there was something about Peter which goaded the pirate captain to frenzy. It was not his courage. It was not his engaging appearance. It was not... There is no beating about the bush, for we know quite well what it was, and have got to tell. It was Peter's cockiness. This had got on Hook's nerves. It made his iron claw twitch, and at night it disturbed him like an insect. While Peter lived, the tortured man felt that he was a lion in a cage into which a sparrow had come. The question was how to get down the trees, or how to get his dogs down. He ran his greedy eyes over them, searching for the thinnest ones. They wriggled uncomfortably, for they knew he would not hesitate, to ram them down the poles.
I just imagining the pirates having to stand in the tree and him just stamping on them to try and get them down the trucks.
In the meantime, what of the boys? We have seen them at the first clang of the weapons, turned, as it were, into stone figures, open-mouthed, all appealing, with outstretched arms to Peter, and we return to them as their mouths close, and their arms fall to their sides. The pandemonium above them ceased almost as suddenly as it arose, passed like a fierce gust of wind, but they knew that in the passing it has determined their fate. Which side had won? The pirates, listening avidly at the mouths of the trees, heard the question put by every boy, and alas, they also heard Peter's answer. "If the Redskins have won," he said, "they will beat the tom-tom. It is always their sign of victory. Now Smee had found the tom-tom and was at that moment sitting on it. You will never hear the tom-tom again, he muttered, but inaudibly, of course, for strict silence had been urged. To his amazement, Hook signed him to beat the tom-tom, and slowly there came to Smee an understanding of the dreadful wickedness of the order. Never, probably, had this simple man admired Hook so much. Twice Smee beat upon the instrument, and then stopped to listen gleefully.
I love how they're really trying to make out that he's really diabolical. I mean, he's being very clever and very sneaky in this thing, but I don't feel like it's unbelievably wicked. But then I think with the context of how important fairness is in this book, this must seem really unfair. Law of the island. Yeah, I think that's probably why he's making such a big deal out of it. Like in warfare, and you expect things like this.
Isn't like in most famous battles throughout history, there has been an element of surprise, whether it's just, oh, there was more people than we expected, or they came from a different place.
Or an outwitting as well.
They came from above, or they came from two different places.
Yeah.
Standard warfare, isn't it?
Like,
take people by surprise. Pull out all the stops.
He just wants people to charge each other at the correct time and just, like, come to blows.
The tom-tom! The miscreants heard Peter cry. An Indian victory! The doomed children answered with a cheer that was music to the black hearts above, and almost immediately they repeated their goodbyes to Peter. This puzzled the pirates, but all their other feelings were swallowed by a base delight that the enemy were about to come up the trees. They smirked at each other and rubbed their hands. Rapidly and silently, Hook gave his orders, one man to each tree, and the others to arrange themselves in a line 2 yards apart.
I thought the rapidly and silently was a description of them rubbing their hands. Yeah.
I mean, sorry, that's not very good for the podcast. I just did that.
That's what I thought. It was like rapidly and silently did Captain Hook give his orders. Oh, okay, sorry. It wasn't to do with them just standing there going like this, like crickets.
He's giving us orders. Go to each tree, 2 yards apart. What?
You came in at a lovely moment there, Matt, but you didn't allow me to say end of chapter. That was it. That was all you got there.
That was so short.
He seemed to be more interested in schooling children on warfare and how it's meant to be fought, or how it's honourably fought, and didn't really actually give us much in terms of the actual battle. But that does seem to be quite typical of older books. I find that you don't get that whole, like, he punched him in the face and then he punched him back, and they don't do that blow to blow.
Maybe it's just seemed to be inappropriate in those days.
Yeah, maybe.
It's considered to be crass.
Yeah, because even like Tolkien in Lord of the Rings, which is written quite a bit later than this, even the battles in the books of those were quite disappointing. He spent more time like describing random things to do with the land and the magicalness of the place. And then when it comes to battles, it's like he kind of skimmed through it. Do you know what I mean? So it does seem to be a feature of period books. And it's kind of funny because when we've made the film remakes of these books, the battles are the things that get the most airtime.
I was going to say, they spent half the film on those bits.
Yeah, because visually they are more exciting to watch.
Yeah, because we love a sword fight.
Yeah.
It's such a good, it's so easy to like fill 5 minutes with a sword fight of, one's in the ascendancy and then the other one, and then he nearly gets him, and then suddenly he turns around and he's got the other person.
Yeah. I mean, they kind of lost the plot with The Hobbit. I felt like that was too many sword fights. They tried to pad it out with too much fighting.
That's because it's one children's book, Matt, not 3 epics.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could do The Hobbit, couldn't we?
I don't think it's old enough. Tolkien hasn't been dead long enough, unfortunately.
That's true.
Dead.
Again, we'll do it in 2060.
Yeah.
Season 40.
As Josh said the other day, he was like, why did you live so long? I want to read your book. Should have died straight after writing it. So I'm looking at lit charts on this chapter.
Lit charts!
And there's a little chapter here, a little paragraph on Hook. saying, "We have learned something new and surprising about Hook. We've thought all along that Hook wants to kill Peter to avenge himself for the loss of his arm, or in the spirit of customary his hostility between pirates and the Lost Boys. But vengeance is only a cover for Hook's real feeling, a hatred so intense and specific it verges on obsession." So he's trying to say that Hook's kind of desire to kill Peter Pan goes beyond mere revenge, goes beyond just the hostility between the two bands, and almost verges on the point where he is obsessed with Peter. So
the quintessential best of enemies.
Yeah, but it's almost like they've not really described that Peter's as obsessed with Hook, apart from him saying to the Lost Boys, if you meet Hook, you have to leave him because he's mine. It kind of reduces Hook to this kind of psychopathic stalker level of animosity towards Peter Pan. Almost like in a normal situation in real life, it would be someone you'd be getting a restraining order on.
Yeah.
There's a big turning point here for me in the way that Hook is portrayed. Because earlier on in the chapters, his plans involved cake and ridiculous, naive children's notions of how battle is conducted. This is very, very dark. We have a guy who has, even though he refuses to describe it, we have a character who has intentionally, outwitted and surprised the enemy and massacred them.
Yeah.
Not captured, not kind of beaten into submission, but massacred.
I mean, it's really sort of cold and ruthless.
Big turning point.
Yeah.
Because up till now, the other analysis of the chapters was like, Hook is a baddie, but he is a baddie that has been created in the mind of a child. So that's why he has these limitations in terms of how adult or how evil he can be. But this is
he's like
evil.
More Dick Dastardly than Bill Sykes.
Exactly.
But
he's gone full on Voldemort now, hasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. So it is quite interesting that Lit Charts hasn't made more of that. I thought that would have been something that would have been drummed, that this is a turning point in.
Well, you know what? I reckon there's going to come a day at some point in the future where people will turn to the Lazy Book Club for their literary analysis.
Matt charts.
Yeah. Do not quote me if you are having to write about Peter Pan in any kind of exam. I am not qualified to be the basis of someone's GCSE or A-level literature. Peter and the other boys expect life on the island to proceed according to a series of simple rules, like the tribe in the section above. Their faith in fairness makes them easy targets for deceit. So that's kind of what we were saying before. Why has nobody thought about the fact that the pirates could be deceitful in the battle? And it's because they're so preoccupied and so locked into their rules of how the world should be rather than how the world is, that they're then unable to prepare for those unforeseen circumstances. And I feel like it's quite typical of children to be locked into some kind of routine or viewpoint and not realize that other people do not think the same way as you or may have different morals from you. The naivety is carried through this chapter in the Braves and the Lost Boys rather than the pirates, whereas the naivety was seen through the whole island in the earlier chapters.
Yeah, okay, so now they are the weaker of the factions.
Yeah, it's like the pirates have broken away from that.
Yeah. Maybe it's got something to do with the fact that they'd made a decision to leave and go back to being children again.
So they've torn a bit of fabric in the island in a way.
Yeah, they've made that decision to leave childhood behind by leaving Neverland. That's essentially what they've done.
Yeah.
They've gone, we're not going to be children forever. We will eventually become adults. And then suddenly you see a turning point in how the island suddenly conducts itself.
Yeah, because you do get to a certain age when you realise, there's the unfairness of being a child, which is, I didn't get the thing I wanted. But then there's a time you realise in adolescence of becoming an adult, the true unfairness of the world. in all its like. There's two different levels of that, isn't there? A child's fairness is so like in front of their eyes,
Yeah.
whereas this seems to be a sort of the way things are, the economy, the way people are, the different factions of the island are completely different to what they imagined.
Yeah, and I think that nothing makes you grow up quicker than something horrific
Getting massacred
or unfair happening to you. No, but do you know what I mean? Like, something like that. You know, normally in normal life, nowadays, as they'd say, modern life, this probably happened back, in outlaw days and all the rest of it. But I'd say normally a turning point for people growing up now is, a family member becoming seriously ill, or a family member dying, or a pet dying, or something like that. That's normally when children start to compute that, oh, life isn't always happy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's on a grand scale.
And I think that definitely starts to move you out of this rose-tinted childhood into accepting the world and being a bit more adult and a bit more.
Well, yeah, it's funny because I always thought this, like, because there's an element of it that, at the start they're all just like chasing each other around, and the playtime never stops because in the playground you're always playing cowboys and Indians, or playing the different like. If like boys fighting in the play fighting in the and there's always the battle, and it always respawns, and you can always do it again because it is the playtime. But as soon as it becomes the adult factor, it's like, oh, those people have actually died. Yeah, we can't replay that game.
The severity of the actions really hit home a bit.
Yeah, and we sort of because at the minute, in terms of where the story's left off, they don't know that they're about to run into a lot of danger. Actually, it's somehow worse the fact that we've got the dramatic irony that we as the reader know that they've been hoodwinked and that they're about to come out, and then I'm like, oh my goodness, it's even worse. Rather than it somehow seems worse than if they knew that they'd lost and they had to come out. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because at least you can come out guns blazing and come out, or it becomes a siege situation where you're like, well, do we just sit here and wait for them to get bored and leave, or how much supplies do the kids have? Well, I mean, they survive on imaginary meals, so I imagine that they can just live forever under there.
They just got loads of
toilet
toilet roll.
As Wendy stirring the pot, I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
So where are we going with the next chapter?
I was going to say,
what's the title of the next chapter?
It has come to that point in the podcast when I ask you both what the next chapter's called.
Well, we're asking you because you've got the book up.
No, you have to.
But it was a competition last time, Matt.
Come on, this is a new feature we're introducing. Guess what the next chapter's called?
Oh God.
The pirates invade.
I said
any advances on that?
Or is it be something really boring like the wait
down
or something?
Or like, is it like down the trees they go or something?
Yeah.
Like
okay.
The capture.
You're
I'm
way
gonna go
off
for capture.
You're both way off the mark. I'll give you another. I'll give you a clue, and then I'll give you another guess. It is quite an exciting, provocative chapter title, and it is a question.
Oh.
Yeah.
Captain Hook takes his shirt off.
You said provocative. He went that
but
way.
I love the fact that if we made that a question, Captain Hook takes his shirt off. Oh.
Yeah.
That would be a great one. I'm afraid not. This is a famous Peter Pan trope of a chapter. I have no idea where it's going, but chapter 13 is called "Do You Believe in Fairies?"
Oh.
So there's that.
And if you say no, Tinkerbell dies.
Apparently, but if you breathe, then adults die. So
yeah.
Yeah.
It's so stupid. Well, if you have any thoughts or opinions on this chapter, you can message us on thelazybookclub@gmail.com.
Or drop us a little line on Twitter. Our handle is @LazyBookClubPod.
And we got the same handle on Instagram @LazyBookClubPod.
Thank you for joining us for this chapter. We'll see you next week. That is all.
That is all.